see if it's actually showing up. If anyone is watching, I apologize for all of our technical difficulties with Zoom just not functioning for me today. But we're going to check and see whether it's actually live or not here momentarily. So bear with us if we are in fact live.
Yep, looks good. All right, looks good on my side.
So, all right, we are finally live. All right. We have a few people watching us. There's at least 4 people out there. So this did not go as planned. I will verify to everybody out there. I tested this on Zoom last night about 5 or 6 different times and had absolutely no hitches whatsoever. Everything went perfectly fine. And as we went in today, the go live button just never showed up as available. So we're trying a different platform on BeLive. Hopefully people can hear us. If you can hear us, throw some comments out there. I'm seeing captions. I don't know how to turn that off, so I'm not going to worry about it. The less we mess with it, the better at this point. It's never showed up as available. So we're trying a different platform. I know we have a delay, so let me turn the volume down on there. All right, we are finally live. So let's officially begin. I am Master Mark Jorgensen. This is our first official Region 22 interview and meet the master. Again, often the first time we try things don't go as planned. So much like our quarantine and everything else involved.
Perseverance, we will endure.
Sir. With that said, we have Master Scott Homschek with us. Master Homschek is one of the senior masters in Region 22 as a 6th Dan, owner and operator of River Valley Tong Sudo Academy in Ambridge, Pennsylvania. And both are founding regional director and current regional director, as the case may be. With that said, before we get into our official questions, is there any opening comments or anything you would like to address, sir?
No, thank you, Master Jorgensen, for putting all this together. It's as the regional director, it's nice to have members within our region in the association who undertake a task like this. And despite the little bit of a bumpy road getting started, I didn't have to do anything other than show up. So thank you so much for initiating the project and working through the details.
All right, I want to thank Master Jeff Satianto, my IT guy, who helped me figure out how to do this on BeLive instead of Zoom. Again, don't have any idea why Zoom wasn't working for me today, but it is what it is, and we are now ready to go. So I will start by asking Master Homschek if he could just tell us his basic story, why and how he got started in martial arts, the World Tang Soo Do Association, and kind of how that evolved over time.
Hey, very good. I was actually very fortunate to have started my martial arts career at Grandmaster Shin's studio in Trenton, New Jersey. A friend of the family was a member of a traveling competitive soccer team. Keith Williver was his name. He was a small kid for his age. He was 2 years younger than me. My mom's boyfriend at the time was the coach for the team, and these kids were really good. They traveled all over the state of New Jersey, basically, kicking butt. They went, I think, 2 or 3 years undefeated as a competitive soccer team. And during one of the games, Keith was a fullback, so he was always on our side of the goal. The ball never really got down to our end, and one of the bigger kids on the other team got frustrated and took a sucker punch at Keith. And Keith rolled with the punch, did a wheel kick, and knocked the kid out. And I looked at Mom and I said, I want to do that, which started the conversation. We found out that Keith was in training to become a black belt at a young age at Shin Karate Trenton back in 1981, I believe the time frame was. And we made contact with Grandmaster Shin and started the following week in the youth class.
All right, sounds great, sir. So could you tell us a little bit about I'll rephrase this just a little bit. A lot of us in Region 22 and association in general really treasure our lineage, and many of us can trace our lineage back through the late Master Michael White of Appalachia Tungsten. So as you got involved a little bit later on in life, I know, again, like many of us, you went to Penn State Martial Arts Group and got involved with Penn State Martial Arts Group and Appalachia Tungsten. Is there anything you can share with us about that experience or Master White or the studios you were involved in at that time?
Yeah, actually, it's a beautiful thing that I got to experience early on as part of the association. I was a second degree black belt when I graduated high school at Shin Karate and was heading off to Penn State University's main campus. And my instructor, Master Irwin, said, there's a great representation out there. I'm going to introduce you to Dr. Michael K. Interestingly enough, Dr. K, now Master K, did his internship in Philadelphia when he was doing his academic work. And during that time, he trained with Master Irwin at Shin Karate in Philadelphia. Master Irwin used to go to Shin Karate every Friday to teach classes there. So Master K and I have always had a great connection through Charles Irwin as a mutual instructor and mentor for us. So when I landed at Penn State, I made contact with Master K and started coming to classes, and instantaneously the World Tung Soo family was there to support me in this new life adventure. And one of the things that Master K always offered his black belts and senior students was the opportunity to go train with his instructor at Appalachia Tung Soo, Master Michael White. I was fortunate enough to have access to my own vehicle while I was up at Penn State. So every Saturday morning, whether it was a football game or not, I would get in the car, usually with 2 or 3 other students. Some of the old Penn State folks might remember Mr. Lee Ray, Tim O'Sullivan, Dave Capizzuti. We would hike it up over the mountain, about a half-hour drive, and have the opportunity to assist Master White with teaching the children's class on Saturday morning, and then do some training afterwards with him individually or in a small group.
Excellent. At one point, you mentioned Master Charles Irwin. Those of you who don't know, I remember coming up through the ranks, looking at pictures in our gut manuals and Don manuals of Master Irwin breaking massive stacks of concrete and ice. Had the pleasure to meet him one time as he was helping Master Chambliss with a demonstration, but some people may not know that at one point Master Irwin was actually your stepfather. Just curious if you have anything to share with that, either about him or your experiences, or even just some of those, quote unquote secrets of breaking that massive amount of material that we just don't see so often anymore. That I know at one point you did a lot of that as well.
Yeah, my lineage comes from a line of breakers, not only with Master Irwin, but also with Master K being a breaker. Charles Irwin was a very important part of my life, growing up as a martial artist, but then also to have him as a stepfather and obviously get to know him much more personally and ask questions that a student doesn't typically ask was very special. Charles had an amazing ability out on the training floor to pack so much information and curriculum into such a short time period. And I really didn't appreciate that until I opened up my own studio and was like, wait a second, we didn't get to this and this and this and this. And Master Irwin was always able to get those things done. The way his mind worked in streamlining, compressing information into its most succinct form and keep the class going constantly. Everybody always looked to Master Irwin for the breaking aspects of it, but his true genius was his understanding of body dynamics and class dynamics and how to get the most out of his students. I will share with you some things on the breaking side that I learned from him. Was first off, choose your material correctly. I've posted the video of the ice breaks a few times over the years on River Valley's Facebook group. There was a trip that Mom and Charles went down to visit Master Weichel in Georgia, and because Weichel trained with Charles, for a number of years, and invited his instructor down, and they wanted to do the ice break. And before the big demonstration, they were going to the different ice houses trying to get material to do the break. And every ice house they went to down there, apparently the water is a lot harder in that area. And the story has it that Master Weichel was dropping axe kicks on the blocks of ice and just knocking off chunks. And Charles would just shake his head and say, no. And they finally found some decent ice. They set the stack up, and he used to carry with him steel I-beams that he would support the stacks of ice on. And they didn't, obviously at that time he was flying down there, he couldn't bring the I-beams in his suitcase. So they supported the ice on cinder blocks instead. And Master Orrin always said, he said, usually when he's hitting a stack of ice, he hits it with about 60 to 70% of his full power. He said, with this ice being so hard, he had to hit it as hard as he possibly could. Well, the result of that was he broke the stack of ice. He turned the cinder blocks that it was supported on into dust. He ruptured a blood vessel in his hand and threw his shoulder out of whack for 3 or 4 weeks. And he said he'll never go down to Georgia and break ice again because the water was just so much harder. So I learned from him that the setup of the break and choosing your material is just as important as how hard you hit it. When I started doing concrete breaking, I got to a point where I couldn't get past 6 or 8 of the scallop blocks, and just kept on not working. And I have some old photographs of Charles doing different breaks, and one of them was the concrete break. And if you have one of the old Don manuals or the old gut manuals, and you look at the concrete break, you'll notice that there's a stack of 2x4s on the bottom, and you'll see a black circle. That black circle is a silver dollar. And he only supported the concrete break from the center. He didn't support it from the end. So after doing this for a while and not being able to get past 6 or 8, I said, wait a second, why does he have this supported from the center? And I looked at that photograph. I said, well, let me try. So I got a small I-beam. I set up 6 blocks and, went and hit it. And I found out that when you hit it from the center, they fall away. When you support it from the sides, as they start to break, there's resistance because it runs into each other. The breaking pieces actually decelerate the break significantly, which is why I could never get past 6 or 8. Now, once I figured that out by looking at the old photographs, right, I was able to, I think the final break I did when I was doing concrete was 16 blocks. And didn't have the problem because, and if you look at the videos in slow motion, you'll actually see them kind of pull apart like a zipper, and there's this neat little explosion of dust that comes out, because when you've got it supported in the center on the bottom and you're hitting it on the top, you have actually 2 different force lines that come together in one spot, and where those force lines hit, you'll see on the videos, you get this puff of concrete dust that blows out of the center. So knowing your material and knowing how to set up the material was one of the real key aspects that I learned from Master Irwin. Had forgotten it for a little bit, but ultimately was able to come back around and remember that little bit of knowledge he shared with us.
Excellent, thank you. We just don't see a lot of that kind of breaking anymore. I know a lot of the older masters used to do a lot of that. Eventually it can take a toll.
Yeah, after a while, it takes a toll on your shoulder, which is why I ultimately stopped doing that particular break. I'm 50 years old now. I think the last time I did that break was when I was 30.
So some of us were fortunate enough to see that back in the day, but yeah, it definitely can take a toll after a while. I'm just going to take a quick shout out to people that are watching. We have a few people watching us. We probably would have had more if we had started on time, but this will still be available later to you. If you are out there watching and you want to upload any comments or questions from Master Homschek, I have a list prepared, but I will be taking a look to see if anybody else out there has anything from Master Homschek as well as we go. All right, so continuing on, I'd like to talk to you a little bit about the founding of River Valley Tongsudo. I know at the time that you started, it was literally the only World Tongsudo Association studio in the region, which was Region 8 at the time, the only real studio in the association in Western Pennsylvania at the time. So could you share any of the challenges or perhaps opportunities that arose out of that and kind of how that fed into the beginnings of Region 22?
The start of River Valley, kind of you have to back up a little bit to go back to when I got married. Got married while I was finishing up my senior year of college, and my wife's family has a nice piece of property with 3 different houses on it that were occupied by family members out in the general Pittsburgh area. At the time, her grandmother was in a nursing home and her house was empty. So as these, 2 young, recently graduated college students, were getting ready to embark on, life, we made the decision of, let's go and move back to the homestead. We moved into her grandmother's house, which is where we still live to this day, and, started our professional careers. Julia started working in daycare, and I started looking for any type of work I could find related to my field, which was very hard at that time. My degree is in quantitative business analysis. Ultimately, I started out working for Little Caesars Pizza. That lasted 4 or 5 months while I looked for some other things. We made the decision early on that we were going to have a studio, but we wanted to be financially stable. So it wasn't until we were both, employed at good jobs that we started looking at the commercial location. Now, during that time, I was teaching classes out of my basement, which was where we did the first GUP test for River Valley with Mr. Scott Dybel and my wife Julia. And then we taught in the front yard and then a local park. And once we had the financial stability of good jobs, then I started looking in the local area to see where were there storefronts. I tried YMCA's and health clubs, but couldn't get any transaction there. In the meantime, we had some more students, some gentlemen that I worked with who were interested, and some of their friends, and now I've got 3 or 4 people who want to train with me, and it's starting to get cold. So we finally found a storefront in Ambridge, Pennsylvania that I jumped into. It was relatively inexpensive rent-wise, and I knew that we could afford to pay those expenses if we didn't have a lot of students. So 726 Merchant Street, which is our first commercial location, started December 4th of 1992. And the rest has gone on, pretty much slow, steady growth. We were the first World Tongsudo school west of Johnstown in that time period. Early on in the association's founding, C.S. Kim and Master Nam were part of World Tongsudo, and they are in the greater Pittsburgh area. But they had left the association, I believe, in 84 or 86. Time frame, and they had not been active, for a number of years. So at least for 5 years, there had been no World Tongsudo out in Western Pennsylvania, and we got things started. Some of my students went on to get studios started. Yourself and Ricky came out to, back towards the homestead where her parents lived, and got yours. We were very thankful to have some additional World Tongsudo folks come out and join us in Western Pennsylvania, and it was a pleasure to see you guys get your studios up and running and be a small part of the startup process with that. And we've got a great thing going out in Western Pennsylvania. I think we're up to 7 or 8 studios at this point, and hopefully some more on the table in the not too distant future.
Excellent. So moving on beyond the studio into association level kind of functions, you've fulfilled a lot of roles, both as regional director and as the chair of the scholarship committee for the World Tongue Judo Federation for a long time. Is there anything you'd like to share, either about your history of service with the association, or perhaps some kind of accomplishment or something maybe that was achieved during that time that you're particularly proud of, or just, again, any kind of possible story to share about that?
I had the pleasure of going down to Argentina with Grandmaster Strong in the latter part of last year for the Latin American Masters Clinic and Championship, and there was a conversation. He is along with some assistance from some others, working on a book of Grandmaster Shin's philosophies, and we were having a conversation at one of the restaurants down there. And the thought came to mind that we were talking about what makes World Tongue Sudo so unique compared to all the other martial arts organizations. And I said, it came to mind that Grandmaster Shin established an organization that is based upon volunteerism and service. All the regional directors that we have, we are not compensated financially for our time. And I think that's a really critical aspect to consider, that we are doing this thing as studio owners and as regional directors, scholarship chair, building fund chair, Master Artika, who runs the judging program for us. This is all volunteer work, and because of that, we're doing it out of love for what we do, and that desire to service our fellow association members. That comes directly from Grandmaster Shin, and Master White and Master K. Both followed that same mindset and instilled that mindset in their students. So when the scholarship opportunity came around, they asked me if I was interested. Grandmaster said, "Would you be interested?" And we jumped in. At that time, it was just the Region 8 scholarship. I took over based on the work that Master Gallagher had already done. And we got the program with a number of different people's help, kind of solidified, and that was going so successfully. A gentleman by the name of Frank Giordini from Master Peterman's studio suggested to Grandmaster Shin that for the building fund and the scholarship fund, we should have a separate organization that was a 501c3. And he was very instrumental behind the scenes, getting all the paperwork filed with the federal government on setting us up as a 501c3. And as Grandmaster Shin had asked me to be the head of the scholarship portion of the foundation and help seed that program in other regions, I got to be kind of behind the scenes as all that was, getting started and unraveling. And now Master Molinaro took the mantle over for me when I got shifted over to a regional director's position, and he has done a bang-up job on not only keeping it going, but putting in some additional things that have just allowed it to run smoother, particularly in regards to getting things started up in regions that don't have scholarship programs right now. So I'm very, very pleased with what we as an association did in the setting up the scholarship. I don't have the numbers anymore, but literally tens and tens of thousands of dollars have been awarded to college students to help them launch their professional careers, and that's a great legacy to have. In addition to that, we back in 2009, in conversation with Grandmaster Shin, we decided that enough of us were interested in Western Pennsylvania to split off from Region 8 and have our own region, and we're able to incorporate the folks out in Ohio as well, who split off from Region 5. Starting a new region from scratch was, both challenging, exciting, and gave me an opportunity to work even more closely with Grandmaster Shin than I had ever before, because there at that time we were Region 22, so this had only been done 21 times prior, and it was challenging. I was on the phone with Grandmaster Shin sometimes 2 and 3 times a day working through issues and problems that we were facing as the region got up and running. And that's a memory I will always cherish. The ability to, have him as a mentor and a guide as we got things running. It wasn't me that started the region. You were part of that when we got started. It was we that started the region, but Grandmaster Shin was really, really helpful in doing all of that.
I know Master Homschek won't toot his own horn, so I'll do it a little bit. I still remember a meeting with Grandmaster Shin where he told us, is like, we all know only one person can do this. Only one person can run this new region. So, but we have to go through all the steps first. So we all knew that it was going to happen well before it did, and we all knew who was going to be in charge. But we had to make sure all those T's were crossed and the I's were dotted to make sure it happened. But we appreciate your leadership over the years, the other people that have helped run the region also, but that you have been willing to step in and fill that role once again after stepping away from it is definitely something we all appreciate in this region.
There's an interesting thing that, and I'll tell you why I came back to be the regional director. For those of you who were at the opening of the world headquarters shortly after Grandmaster Shin passed away, there is something that Grandmaster Bodwin said that was incredibly profound that sticks with me to this day. And we were just he was giving his speech, if you will. He said, "I will serve." He said, this is not something that I was immediately looking to do. I've lost my best friend. He said, but for you and for the association, I will serve. So when Grandmaster Strong asked me to come back and be regional director again, I had that in the back of my mind. Following Grandmaster Bodwin's, example and leadership, I will serve, and that's what we're doing.
Yes, sir. Directly related with that, we have some comments. Yoshi Ota says, "What has been the most exciting or challenging aspect of being the director of Region 22?"
It depends on which phase. Obviously, the early start of the region, even though we had a great example on what had been going on in Region 8, all the years we were part of that, there is just so many details, nitpicky things, and my style of doing things is I want to know the nitpicky details of every position and every function that has to happen, to understand the ins and outs. Not that I necessarily need to do that work myself, but I want to know how it functions. So, just this wealth of new experiences that I had to kind of get a hold of, process and understand how, part A interacts with part B to ultimately take us to point C was really, really challenging. Over time, with all the folks that help run the region in their respective roles, understanding how all those pieces fit and meld together, and now allowing, and not just allowing, but trusting that the members who are, in charge of different things, Master Jorgensen, yourself as judging coordinator, Master Ricky Jorgensen does just a phenomenal job with our championship preparations. We finished one championship, and 2 weeks later, she's starting to prepare for the championship the following year. And the level of detail that we give her carte blanche, authority, and she just runs with it. Master Holbrook takes care of all of our Don testing, and there are so many people in the region who now, we don't have to micromanage them. They just do their things, but it took us a while to get to that point. And you really need, at the onset of a new region, you need to take the time to understand the ins and outs of all those functions and tasks, but then ultimately let the individual run it and come to you when they have problems. And that's where we're at now with Region 22.
Sir. So there's another comment that I will read, but if you could give me a second to ask an additional question before you respond. Rusty Camacho says, can Master Homschek tell how he got interested in flexible weapons and how I can learn to do it? Along with that, I had a question prepared that kind of relates to that. So Master Homschek has come to be known as kind of an innovator in the association in terms of development of different curriculum and teaching methodologies, going back to the development of his flexible weapons curriculum. In addition, with Master K, the creation of the Warrior's Path seminars, and more recently doing the total immersion seminars with One Steps. So to answer Rusty's question, can you talk a little bit about the flexible weapons and maybe some of those other areas and the mindset that you have behind that development?
No, great question. And let me answer Rusty's latter part. How can he learn to do it? And I'll talk a little bit how it got developed. But through Paladin Press, I put out a video more than 10 years ago called Improvised Flexible Weapons. Unfortunately, Paladin Press, due to mostly to YouTube, went belly up, and the rights to the video reverted to me. And I wasn't interested in getting into video marketing, and trying to, make hundreds of copies of DVDs and send them out. So I uploaded the DVD to YouTube, which is available on my River Valley YouTube channel. So the entire content of the 2-hour instructional video on flexible weapons is accessible through River Valley's YouTube channel. So that's your starting place, Rusty. There's additional curriculum that goes beyond what's in that video, but that's a great place to get you started, and will keep you going for years and years and years. As to how I got interested in the flexible weapons, we have to go back to Master White. One of the things that Master White used to say, at the time I was at Penn State, I was a second-degree black belt. And he said, if you're going to be a master someday, there's two things in his opinion that you have to do. You either need to discover something new, create something new essentially, or discover something that has been lost to the art of Tung Sado and bring it back. So that was requirement number one. Requirement number two, in his opinion, is that you needed to have taught at least 1,000 different students. So I was just, when I launched my martial arts career as a studio owner in Pittsburgh, obviously we were nowhere near 1,000 students. That took a lot longer to get up to. But I started really thinking about, what the heck am I going to do that, discover something new? Now we have to revert back to a lesson Master K did. Master K was a very good conceptual thinker. And one of the classes I showed up at, he reaches into his bag, he grabs a old white belt, he hands it over to me and my best friend Kelly Kemper, and he says, go in the back of the room. You have 45 minutes to, use this and figure out what to do with it. And then at the end of class, you need to teach everybody what you thought, what you discovered. And that was the initial seed that planted flexible weapons in my brain. Don't ask me what I taught at the end of that 45 minutes. I taught at the end of that 45-minute session. But that seed got planted. When we moved out to Pittsburgh and we started the studio, that seed continued to germinate. And then I started working with, we weren't using belts, we were using lengths of rope, and it just took a lot of trial and error. And there's a really big pile of stuff that didn't work that nobody ever sees. Right? Everybody sees the stuff that does work when we come out and teach a seminar or teach a breakout section of a clinic. That's only because for that 1-hour clinic, there's probably 100 hours of research and development and guinea pigging with the students to try and, synthesize the system down to its barest elements and make it most convenient for the students to learn.
So kind of piggybacking off of that, more recently, you've developed an extensive curriculum of different ways of doing one steps. I know that was part of one of your master's theses as well. And now you're doing the total immersion seminars with the one steps. Is there anything you'd like to say about that? Either how you became interested in it, what need you saw that needed to be filled, etc.
once again, we go back to Grandmaster Shin as the person who inspires us. Not only was he a phenomenal technician, a very giving individual of his time and his energy, but he had a great ability to plant seeds and then step back and watch them develop. After one of the Region 8 black belt tests, we were at an instructor's class, and he was very upset and adamant. And the short version of it was he looked at us and said, "I watched your students during the black belt test, and their one steps were horrible. What are you, as masters, going to do to fix this problem?" And having grown up in Grandmaster Shin's studio and spent a considerable amount of time with him over the years, I knew that he was serious, and I took up the challenge. And initially the challenge was to come up with 100 different ways we can practice one steps. Not 100 new one steps, but to take our existing curriculum and squeeze as much as we possibly can out of that curriculum. And once again, that germ or that seed started to germinate, and we started writing down and recording the drills that we were coming up with. And I forget what the exact count is now, but I believe we're up to like 137 distinctly different drills that can be utilized depending upon what the challenge is that the student is facing. Personally, having traveled all over the association, both domestically and some international travel, one steps is still a huge problem. And I will take Grandmaster Shin's attitude towards us as the studio owners. A lot of the issues with one-step training is directly relatable back to the studio owners, and their attitudes towards one-step training. A lot of folks look at the one steps merely as a association requirement that we need to be able to demonstrate in order to move up to black belt testing. But the wealth of knowledge that is contained within the one steps, when you really dig into them, is just amazing. Master K and I did the Warriors Path training seminars for years, and if you've never went through Warriors Path, it's basically 24 hours of floor time in 2.5 days. It's a small group, super intensive training where at the end of 2.5 days, you've had 24 hours of that immersion. What we wanted to do with the one steps after we had developed all these drills was to have that same level of involvement, which is where the term total immersion came. Now we're doing 4 4-hour blocks of one-step training is a standard total immersion seminar. Just back in February, Master Harvey and I went down to train and teach the total immersion seminar at Joe Skoda's studio. Master Skoda and his wife Lisa were kind enough to put us up in their home, open up their dojang for us, and we had an absolute blast going through one steps. And the folks who were there will tell you, it was 16 hours of training doing just association standard one steps, but running them through all the different facets that we've come up with them. And you come out of that, and a lot of people look at one steps and they're like, okay, we got to do one step training. They come out of the other side of total immersion and they're like, wow, one steps are awesome. And I've really kind of discounted these over the years, and I have to go back and re-engage with them. And, that is a wonderful thing to see where they're at the beginning of the seminar and where they're at the end of the seminar. And then a year later, come back, or 2 years later, and they're still loving the opportunity to train with one steps. And, one of my goals is to continue to go to different regions and different areas and do those seminars so that we can change the one-step mindset on the association level entirely.
So you guys hear it. Contact Master Homschek if you're interested in more about those total immersion seminars. Just another comment here. Lester Hicks says, "Hello, Master Homschek. Once you told me that a master should pass on his art in a better form or status than it was given to him or her. What do you see as the greatest need for improvement in the current state of Tangsudo and the martial arts more broadly?
No, I just, we should have read Lester's question a little bit ago, because I really do see one-step training on the technical side as something that's very lacking. I've got the methodology now, and I've got my ambassadors who've been through the program, who've gone into their studios. A shout out to a few of them that came to the first total immersion. Yoshiada, posted a question earlier. He was at the first total immersion that we did in Pittsburgh, and went back out to his studio and changed things out there. My good friend Master Daniel Marco flew in from Sweden to attend the very first seminar and took them back. And Grandmaster Bodwin sent Anthony Bracco from his studio, and they were doing some of the total immersion drills the next class that Anthony got back to. So the ability to make that change is there, and the ambassadors are out there doing it already. So on a technical side of things, that's the biggest need that I see, and the biggest improvement that we are currently making. We as an association have been doing a much, much better job with the teaching methodologies that we are bringing to the students. The way that, most of the studio owners are teaching classes today are not entirely different, but significantly different than, the 2 and 3 hour death marches that we went. Okay, we're going to do half an hour of hand drill, half an hour of kick drill, and now we're going to do a half an hour of forms. We as an association have really done a great job of keeping our traditional values, but embracing more modern education theory to enhance what our students are doing, and also doing a very good job of sharing that amongst ourselves, via master's clinics and black belt classes and instructors classes and things like that. So, the quality of instruction that's given today is, so much different than it used to be, but we needed the giants of the past, in my, upbringing, the Grandmaster Shins, the Master Irwins, and the Master Whites, and the Master Ks. We are standing on their shoulders with what we're doing now. I'm tickled to see, where World Tungsto is going to be 20 and 30 years from now, and the changes and the improvements that not only our students are going to make, but our students' students are going to make.
Sir, so you kind of already answered this question, so I'm going to try to frame it maybe a little bit differently. If you feel like you already answered it, though, that's fine. So one of the questions I had, I'll phrase it a little differently. Do you think there are any specific changes you've seen over the years in World Tangsudo Association, either for the better, you've already talked about the teaching methodologies, or for the worse? Or do you feel like you kind of already discussed this question? That's fine.
No, one of the things that's pronouncedly different today than when I started in 81 is the involvement of children. I was 11 years old when I started, and that was pretty young. And I think our kids class had maybe 8 to 10 students in it. Now we take students as early, at least at River Valley, as young as 3 years old. One of our requirements for our, little dragons to come out to the training floor is they have to be 3, they have to be potty trained, and they have to come on the floor willingly. From there, we get them on the floor, and I have students now who are graduating college, going into the military, or have gone into the military and are a few years into their military career, that started with us at the age of 3 and 4. That was completely unheard of, teaching a 3-year-old, when I started back in 81. And, that is one of the vast improvements. And once again, let's look and see where those students who started at 3 instead of 23 are able to take the art when they're 43 and 53 and 83. That's going to be, truly a blessing to to watch. And we still have gaggles of little dragons coming in the studio. COVID-19 aside, I can't wait until the restrictions are lifted and we can get all those guys and girls back in the studio and continue where we left off.
So, building off of that, with the COVID-19, we've all experienced our own unique challenges. I kind of was more interested. A lot, we all kind of know what the challenges are right now. So, I was a little more interested, either on a higher perspective. What do you feel the challenges or ongoing things might be as a regional director and studio owner? But how do you foresee this possibly changing either the way we teach or interact in the future?
Well, one of the things that's come out of it, you're doing it, I'm doing it. There's lots of people across the association, suddenly jumping into this, digital teaching format via Zoom or other platforms. It's challenging. It's we could have just closed our doors and said, okay, well, whenever they're done, we'll open back up. But that's not our way of doing things. Grandmaster Shin taught us perseverance. Part of perseverance is finding a way to succeed regardless of the adversity that we're facing. So, is teaching via Zoom optimal? No, because I can't grab a hold of somebody's hand and put them in the right position. Work on things like posture and whatnot. But it's the paradigm that we're in right now. So we are working as hard as we possibly can to succeed within the limitations that are set and pushing those limitations further and further. We are doing little dragon classes via Zoom, right? And it's great to see the boys and girls on the screen, and they're doing their jumping jacks, and they're going down to their push-up position, doing the dragon roar. They are engaged. If we had just taken the mindset of, well, we'll just wait until it's open and we'll hope to get most of them back, we would have lost most of those. And the service that we are giving to the parents is greatly appreciated. I see that in the emails that they're sending back to me and the comments that they post to Facebook when we throw some of the Zoom captures up on the screen. I can't wait for the studios to be allowed to be opened again in Pennsylvania because we're in one of the red counties. Governor Wolf has said it's going to be at least June 4th before they're going to start lifting the stay-at-home restrictions. So we're looking at least another month before we're going to get up and running. And Region 22 as a whole, most of the studios are completely shut down. There's only a handful of us who have the technology and the ability to run the Zoom classes. I know I've opened up some of my classes to other studios who don't have that opportunity, as well as my Facebook group where we've got some instructional videos and whatnot posted.
Definitely. I've recently done that with one of my former students, Master Greco, as well, starting to invite his students in. So any of you out there, I know you're welcome to contact myself or Master Homschek or probably anybody that's running Zoom classes, and they'll probably welcome you in. So if you're looking for that opportunity to train, just contact an instructor who's doing it, and we'll get you set up. Step away from perhaps the martial arts. We can't do that entirely because of who we are. But I wanted to ask you, are there any activities or interests outside of the martial arts, or perhaps something that maybe people don't necessarily know about you that have helped kind of shape who you are today?
I don't know if it shapes who I am today, but it certainly helps. Anybody who follows me on Facebook will know that I don't post a lot of family pictures and whatnot and personal information. That's just not my personality, but you will see lots of pictures of the fish that I catch. I'm very blessed to have a phenomenal relationship with my father-in-law. Friday is fishing day. In the wintertime, he and I cut wood or split firewood on Friday. In the summertime, and if it wasn't for the fact that it's 45 degrees out today, we would have probably been up on the lake, spending a good bit of Friday fishing. And not only do I get to spend time with my father-in-law like that, which is phenomenal. But it's an opportunity to just sit back, unplug. Unless my wife calls or my daughter calls, I won't answer my cell phone while I'm out fishing, and just relax. Spend my entire day doing this, but it's all as doing that also gives me an opportunity to, if you will, meditate or concentrate on, things that I need to be doing or want to be doing, both on a regional level and a personal level, but not having the stress and pressure of, oh, I've got to get this done or I've got to get this done. Now, the only thing I have to do is this. But while I'm doing this, my mind is still working and, thinking through different challenges.
So Master Hutchinson chimes in with, it's 85 degrees here in Florida, sir.
If we were allowed to travel, Matt, I would be joining you down there, and you can take me out fishing.
Yes, sir. You mentioned the importance of family. Once upon a time, well, now I should say, in a great way, it's very commonplace for husband and wife, master teams and instructor teams to be operating studios. Back when you started, that was a little bit less common, maybe. You've mentioned Julia several times. For people that don't know, that's Master Julia Harvey, who is Master Homschek's wife. I hesitate to use that term in any kind of negative way, because anybody who's married to a master knows that it's not that. It's a super supportive kind of role. So is there anything about your either professional or personal relationship with Master Harvey, and even your daughter Victoria, who's a black belt as well, that you'd like to share in terms of family and the martial arts?
It's a beautiful thing to be able to pursue your passion and have your soulmate right alongside with you. Master Harvey did not start in the martial arts. It's not where we met. We actually met at Ye Old College Diner in State College. We were both wait staff and then shift managers there during our final 2 years up at Penn State. So that's where I met her. Prior to that, she had been a dancer from the age of 2 all the way up that she was part of the Penn State modern dance group or troupe that went to Israel the year that I met her. So she had a lifetime invested in the art of dance. And if you know anything about the dance world, the discipline involved in dance, not just physically, but mentally, is absolutely 100% compatible with the physical and mental discipline that's required to succeed in the martial arts. She, after college, was not interested in pursuing dance professionally, but she had always had a mindset that she wanted to learn martial arts. So she jumped into the martial arts world with both feet after we got married. And it's been a fantastic ride ever since. She has her own studio, Imperial Dragon Tungsudo Karate School. And, my personal philosophy for how we work together as studio owners, Imperial Dragon is Master Harvey's school. When I go to help Master Harvey out at her school, yes, ma'am is the answer. She does some things a little bit differently. She looks at things technically a little bit differently than I do. But, when I'm at Imperial, we do things the Imperial way. When she's at River Valley, she does things the River Valley way. And I think it's really important to have that understanding and that dynamic in place, because that allows her to have complete authority and control over the growth and development of her students without me as the senior coming in and upsetting the apple cart, because that's not beneficial for the students. It's also not beneficial for the studio owner to basically have contradictory information coming in. So the thing that I would advise for any of the spouses that are up and coming as couples in the martial arts, make sure if you have multiple studios, you understand that relationship and you honor and respect that relationship. It really allows the studios to grow their own identities. Imperial is not a satellite of River Valley. It was never a satellite of River Valley. It has always been its own entity. That's why we have 2 different names.
Sure. Just a couple more questions. We are coming up on that hour mark, so we'll probably wrap up here in a little bit. So if anybody else has any final questions they want to throw in here, please put them up in the comments, and we'll try to get them out there to Master Homschek. Just a few more questions for you, though, sir. One of the big things, especially I know in our region and our lineage, the passing on of martial arts in general often involves the passing on and preserving of stories from the past. So are there any particular stories either involving yourself or, just something that particularly resonates with you as a story of the martial arts that you like to share with the group today?
Well, I shared the how I got it started. I have no idea where Keith Williver ever ended up, but myself, certainly for how the martial arts shaped me, it was a great debt of gratitude to him. Without that example, I might not have ever gotten started in the martial arts. There are thousands and thousands of stories and experiences that we've shared. You and I have shared, them. Some of the really cherished ones. If you remember the time the Grandmaster Shin came out, and Julia, Ricky, you and I got the opportunity to take him down to Pittsburgh, take him through Phipps Botanical Conservatory, have lunch with him, and just share some personal time with him. Without, yes, we had black belt class that evening and all these other things, group testings going on, but the opportunity to just sit down with him and relax and enjoy a non-martial arts setting will be something that I will cherish for the rest of my life. As a regional director, one of the benefits you always have is the opportunity to pick the grandmasters up at the airport and provide transportation for them, often by yourself or with just one other individual, your security chair. And the times that I've had to spend with Grandmaster Bodwin, hear him talking about stories with Grandmaster Shin's black belts at tournaments at Madison Square Garden, and the different characters. Grandmaster Bodwin would always talk about Chuck Norris, getting defeated in his match and tapping him on the shoulder and saying, "Okay, Bob, you've got to win this next one for Master Shin." Driving with Grandmaster Strong once, and hearing about the band that he used to play with when he was in college, and one of the United States presidents that he had the opportunity for him and his band to be the entertainment at a picnic. You'll have to talk to Grandmaster Strong to find out the rest of the story. But as regional directors, we have a much closer personal connection with the Grandmasters that is just truly something I will forever cherish.
Sir. So turns out that the question list I came up with was pretty good for the hour, but we have a few more questions that have popped in from some people watching, so I will just run down them real quick. Starting with Mr. Olson, who has hopped on. Who were your primary influences in training, and how are past lessons reflected in the way you teach and train today?
Ooh, thank you, Rashad. Like I said, you've heard all the names. Charles Irwin as the first chief instructor at Shin Karate. The youth class that I started in was taught by Dennis Erdley, and Mr. Erdley kept us interested. I was only in the youth class for about a year before I switched over to the adult class and trained with Master Irwin. Certainly, being able to pick up roots from New Jersey and plant them in Central Pennsylvania and train with Master K and Master White were tremendously influential in the martial artist I became. Charles Irwin always taught the class. He never let any of the black belts teach classes for him. His philosophy was he was the chief instructor, and he's going to do all the teaching. Master K and Master White had a much different philosophy. When I stepped into Penn State Martial Arts Group, I stepped in as the senior ranking student with an expectation to teach. And up to that point, I had not taught. And it was Master K who really taught me the aspects of becoming an instructor and sharing your knowledge. I was really good in my early days of chasing students away. With Master K's infinite patience, I learned to keep students. Master White taught me so much about, protocol and philosophy and, the whys of what we're doing as instructors. The name that doesn't get mentioned often is James Keating, gentleman I met through Master K at a bullwhip tomahawk seminar, was the original meeting that Keating was having a seminar out in Walla Walla, Washington, in his studio. And Master K said, "Now you've got to come, you've got to come, you've got to come." And I said, "Okay, finally." And I had heard Keating's name before. For those of you who don't know James Keating, he used to run a seminar called The Riddle of Steel, which was a total immersive, training seminar focused around the edged weapons curriculum. And I would always hear Master K talking about he went to this seminar with Keating, he went to this seminar with Keating, and he would bring back one or two gems of knowledge from training with Jim. So I made the foray out, and I went to the bullwhip and tomahawk seminar. It's really interesting when you're practicing with your bullwhips inside the hotel room. It sounds like a firearm going off when the reverb hits. You were asking about interesting stories. It's one of those quirky little stories I share with Master K. But when I met James Keating and I started working with him, he actually had me share some of the flexible weapons curriculum at his bullwhip and tomahawk seminar. He gave me an hour of his time, and he was instrumental. After watching what I did, he said, "I'm going to make a contact for you with the head of video productions at Paladin Press." At that time was Mike Janich, and he put me in touch with Janich, and that's how the flexible weapons thing got off and running, the video project. But the thing that I took away from Keating was really a finer appreciation for conceptual thinking in our training. I know that you did one of the Warriors Paths with us where we called it Connecting the Concepts. 5 different instructors, 4 hours each. We didn't know each other's curriculum, but we at the end of it showed the connections between them. And the seminar that you taught, sir, was a lock is a block, is a strike, is a throw. And that's a perfect model of conceptual thinking in the martial arts. Your low block can be a lock, it can be a strike, it can be a throw, or it can be a block, right? And Keating really embraces that conceptual thinking and has been a mentor for me in that process, and is, largely responsible for that model that I look at now in regards to teaching. I can teach you this, but teaching you how to utilize this is more important. Your way of interpreting that motion is more important than just this. And helping students understand that, and taking a restrictive framework away from them, and freeing up their minds and say, okay, well, show me what you can do with this. It is very vital to our development as martial artists and our students' development.
Sir, now all kinds of things are hopping in here. So Lester Hicks says, what does a typical day of personal training look like for you, and what advice do you have for studio owners and their personal training?
So there's something that I put together, or that I refer to as the instructor's paradox. We individually as instructors don't have nearly the amount of time that we used to have, to just devote to training to ourselves. We have less time to train. However, the paradox of it is our martial arts skills tend to improve faster than somebody who doesn't teach. And the reason that happens is, in order for me to get a student to understand how to do a spinning back kick, I have to be able to get into their mindset. I need to be able to get into their physiology, need to get into understanding their physical limitations, and thereby help them do a better spinning back kick. So, we don't get nearly the amount of time to train on our own as we did when we were just students. That said, I try and take a few times per week to go through, all of my forms, not just my senior forms, but go through all of my forms. I also have a very good friend, my best friend, Guru Joe Walls, who is a Filipino martial arts instructor, who, when the opportunity for my schedule to be free avails itself, I like to take a class with Guru Walls because he is also a highly conceptual thinker within his own right within the Eskrima martial arts. So predominantly on my own, it's forms training, certainly black belt camps, instructors classes, and masters classes. And then when my schedule frees myself up, I like to go cross train in the Filipino martial arts. Finding out, as Joe and I for the last 15 years have had numerous conversations, that there is more in common between the arts than there is differences. Most people just like to argue about what the differences are.
Sir, I watched the interview with Master Sharp, kind of had similar concepts on that. I think a lot of us do who have been around for a while. So this one was confusing me at first, so you correct me if I'm wrong, Sean, but Sean Campbell, it says, who, I think it means how do you make, wear / test drive new equipment in the dojo?
No, that is who.
And it's who? Okay, I was confused.
That is who. Sean and I trained back at Penn State Martial Arts Group. He was a GUP student. I was an EDON, and I think he's referring to some rib protectors that we got to test drive. Him is the guinea pig. Me is the kicker. Sorry, Sean, you were a great Uki. If you have bruises still from those days, come out to Pittsburgh and maybe I'll let you kick me a few times back. We have a wonderful group of students at River Valley. Over the years, Rashad Olson had chimed in earlier. I see Master Russo has a question posited for us. I've learned to be gentler with my students that I'm test driving on, because otherwise you go through them too quickly. If Ben Haas is on there anywhere, he is largely responsible. Ben Haas and Ron Haas largely responsible for being the guinea pigs as I was fleshing out the flexible weapons curriculum. Roy Donaldson contributed a lot to that, particularly when we shot the video.
Yes, sir. So yes, Master Russo asked, can you speak to your philosophy on training future studio owners?
Every student who walks through the store, the studio storefront, for me, is a potential black belt. Every black belt who comes into the studio or is in the studio is, a potential teacher. Or a class, what we call a class assistant. Every class assistant that I have in the studio is a potential class instructor. Every class instructor I see has the potential to be a studio owner. I have no desire for Julia and I to have any more studios than River Valley and Imperial. However, I do have a desire for our students to go on and open up their own studios. You can't appreciate enough the joy and pleasure, hard work, notwithstanding, but the joy and pleasure that comes from being able to share our passion for the martial arts with our students. All the studio owners out there right now are nodding their heads saying, absolutely. But it's until you walk that path that you really, truly don't appreciate, the things that we have the pleasure of doing on a daily basis. So my little dragons who are walking through the door now, I see as studio owners, and I see it as my job to walk alongside them down that path. Now, does that mean that every black belt's going to become a studio owner? Heck no. For those of you who are contemplating studio ownership, there's an equation I use. It's 1:3. 1 hour of floor time is going to equate to 3 hours of other time. And now all the studio owners are shaking their heads going, absolutely. And those 3 hours might be curriculum development, working on requirement sheets, scheduling classes, doing info calls to, get students signed up for intros, or running the Sam's Club to make sure you have drinks to have in the refrigerator for the end of class when students are done, or something as simple as cleaning the toilets. Somebody has to do all that work. So for every hour that you're going to spend teaching, please plan on 3 hours of additional time for other stuff. And if you think that equation is wrong, talk to your chief instructor. They will tell you honestly, yeah, it requires a lot of work, but is it worth it? Absolutely. I have absolutely no regrets on what I do every day. Now, I tell people all the time, from the time I was 40, I am retired. Retirement is you get up every day and you do what you love to do. I love to teach martial arts. So I am retired, but I am doing what I love to do every single day.
All right, we're going to wrap up here pretty shortly, sir. Just want to, I can't say for certain that they're all still on there, but I just want to roll through some of the names that have been popped up, who've been watching us. Master Russo, Donnie Gillio, Master Tim Watson, Master Nate Gordon, Master Scott Merrill, Master Martha Lace, Master Hart.
Gordon's an old Charles Irwin student as well. He actually spent a good deal of time. I remember, taking classes. Nate and his daughters would take the train in from Philadelphia and come train with us on Saturdays. Good to see you, Nate.
Sir, Rusty Camacho, Dave Ilko, Ben Hawes, Master Don Khan, Hugo Frattini, Justin. I never really understand how you pronounce your name, Justin, but Justin Carvisto, Yoshi Ada, Abby McFarland, Lester Hicks, Master Adam White, Craig Fosnart, Christian Alvarez, Joe McCarty, Kara Cribbs, Christina Rothar, Sean Campbell, Master Hutchinson, Mr. Olson, Angel Ross, Master Brett. Good to see you, sir.
Really good names there.
Kelly Burke, Mr. Francis. So thanks to all you guys for hopping on. I know we had a lot of technical difficulties today. I just wanted to throw those names out in case there's anything that stirred Master Homschek's mind. Any final comments he might want to make to the group today regarding anything at all, any of the grandmasters, masters, instructors, or just closing words of wisdom for us today as we head out, and appreciate you sticking with me as we work through our massive technical difficulties today.
All right. Final thought comes from Grandmaster Shin. He was once asked in an interview how he became Grandmaster, and he said, perseverance. He said, I never gave up. And I think, we have high times, we have low times. COVID-19 is kicking a bunch of our butts, but we are going to persevere. We are going to come out of the other side of this thing stronger and hungrier than we were when it started. So keep up the good faith, folks. I've been signing off on all my emails, perseverance with a positive attitude. So please take that to heart. We are going to be stronger when this is all done. We just have to persevere a little bit longer. Take care of yourselves. Tung Su.
Tung Su. Thanks to everybody out there. I just want to say that I'll be trying to continue to do this with other Region 22 masters and perhaps other instructors as we go along. Hopefully we have less technical difficulties in the future. First one's always a challenge, so thanks for sticking with us again, sir. We have so many masters in the World Tung Soo Association. One of the reasons I jumped on this was even with 3 or 4 people doing it, it's not enough to hit every possible person out there that we would like to hear from. And one of my biggest regrets is that we don't have more material from our grandmasters and masters that have gone before us. So once again, I appreciate your time, sir, and everybody who's been involved with these interviews. And let's continue and get that information out there to everybody. Have a great weekend, everybody. Have a great weekend, sir. And thanks again.
All right. Take care. Tung Su.
Tung Su.